Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Project Zero, where we hear some of the journeys of some of the best project leaders in the game. My name is Alex Tuck, and I'm the host. And I am here today with Senior Director of Program Management from NeuroFlow, Matt Mayabb. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do at NeuroFlow.
Of course, in NeuroFlow, we are on a mission to create a happier and healthier world. We do this by bridging the divide between mental and physical health through proactive measurement, management, and engagement with best in class behavioral tech and services. In leading our program management office, I ensure our senior leadership team have frequent and good visibility into how the most critical initiatives in the company are performing. But I operate at multiple levels, toggling between being in the day to day leadership of projects and ensuring progress and decisions are being made with speed and quality and just keeping things advancing. And I help out with governance mechanisms related to business performance. Think about company OKRs, tracking our corporate scorecard, and annual business cycles too.
Oh, wow. Awesome. You came into the organization through an acquisition, right? Like, tell us a little bit about what your previous company did and then what that looked like moving into NeuroFlow.
That's right. In early February, Alex, we were acquired. NeuroFlow acquired Quartet Health. Been there since midway through 2021. We're very much a care enablement and care delivery organization, also focused on behavioral health. So it's great to remain in that space and going from Quartet to NeuroFlow.
That's awesome. I remember talking to some couple of folks over at NeuroFlow. They were like, "Oh yeah, this new PMO lead that we have is just awesome." I was really excited to meet you, Matt, and to hear about all the work that you're doing there.
Oh, that's insane.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's go back in history a little bit, maybe just a couple of years. Let's go back to when you started off in project management. What did that look like? What was that journey? Did you start in project management or did you accidentally fall into it?
Good question, Alex. Yeah, and one that forced a lot of good reflection for me. It's been a little bit of a meandering pathway to say. I don't think I ended up in project management by accident. The reality is that I have some natural characteristics and abilities around planning and getting organized, setting goals, executing against those, and measuring how you did. But I'm also like a learner and curious about different functions. And while I was at Humana, where I was at for about 14 years, I had the ability to move around and get exposure to the different functions. I also went back to school a couple times for graduate degrees to help me build more knowledge and hopefully be more competitive after having a lack of success in competing for jobs earlier in my career. But out of college, I worked in a call center for a third party benefits administrator, answering inbound phone calls, setting up FMLA leave of absence requests, and processing medical certification forms from providers. And as you excelled and proved yourself, the pathway was to graduate from that to doing quality assurance or QA, listening to phone calls, giving constructive feedback, and checking how those medical certs were being processed. And then going further upstream from there to implementation of new clients who wanted to bring this service online for their employee population. But I developed great listening skills in the call center, which I think is something that's relatively foundational for project managers, as well as empathy for the situations that people are experiencing. And so after that, implementations was my foot in the door at Humana. But I really wanted to give HR and compensation a try after being mentored by a friend's stepfather when I was in high school and had several HR related internships in college. But while at Humana, I did eventually move into sales incentive compensation. We implemented and automated a data aggregation and calculation tool for around 3,000 sales associates. And then I did executive leadership development, which was a great stop and something I had to set my sights upon, making sure our leaders were well equipped to lead the company when the broader industry was going through a lot of transformation, external changes with population health and value-based care, data analytics and insights and digital transformation. Those were taking hold. And I eventually felt the stakes might be a little bit higher in the business. So I landed a job in Medicaid business development and market product strategy for a stretch at Humana, and then found my way into data governance for a couple of years. And then finally corporate strategy, where we rolled out the balanced scorecard and a strategy map and worked closely with senior leadership on measuring progress. I did want to get broader experience in care delivery and value-based care. So I moved to Careline as care delivery subsidiary at Elevance, formerly known as Anthem, as a chief of staff to a regional president, and got some really good operational experience while also building on some of the expertise around business performance I'd built at Humana. And then to your point, I joined Quartet a few years ago to lead their program management office and implement new programs. We designed and launched basically from scratch an innovative program for patients with serious mental illness. These are typically difficult to engage people who struggle to navigate the healthcare ecosystem and end up in the emergency room disproportionately more than they should. We developed a nurse practitioner led model designed to address their holistic needs, where the nurse practitioners were mobile, meeting and engaging patients where they're at, like in their homes. And we surrounded the patients with a care team that included therapist, a social worker, case manager, and others. And we had total cost of care accountability for their physical health, their behavioral health. And so the care team assessed across those dimensions in addition to social determinants of health to inform what their personalized care plan could look like and check in with our care team members. And then earlier this year, to your point, we were acquired by NeuroFlow and transitioned the program to the regional health plan that we had partnered with in launching that program for the SMI population. And really excited to remain in the behavioral health space at NeuroFlow, where we help risk-bearing organizations improve outcomes and reduce costs by surfacing and supporting behavioral health needs that typically go undetected or underaddressed. But Alex, as you can see, it's been a nonlinear pathway to say the least.
Oh yeah, nonlinear, but honest, I think you have an ideal healthcare background. Like you have touched virtually every single piece of the business, right? And so you understand what payers are dealing with, what providers are dealing with, like what the health tech is dealing with, like all the different pieces. Like you've touched them all, right? Including like helping with leadership and everything else. And now you're back in program management and connecting all the dots, right? So
Exactly. Yeah, it helps you anticipate a bit more and provide some of that other context to projects that may not be as nascent to some folks.
oh, yeah, and it's interesting because I think someone that has this deep healthcare experience like you have, literally, advice for anyone out there that's starting earlier in their career, join a call center or wait tables or do something like that. If you want to learn empathy and experience what folks are gonna deal with, it's really hard work, like, really hard work. And
Absolutely.
so you have that experience, man, it's pretty good.
Recommend everyone do a
Yeah.
tour in a call center for a bit. There's nothing like it. It's such a great learning ground.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I did it. I didn't take calls, but I helped with the call center, standing up the call center for our Obamacare implementation here. A company called Maximus was the vendor there. They do call centers everywhere. But yeah, it was just unbelievable. It was like, oh my God, you have to hit this button to make sure that everyone knows you're going to the bathroom for 90 seconds or you're going to lunch for 30 minutes. You got to hit this button and you're on this code. And people don't understand the pressure that some of these call center folks are under. The thing that I find most interesting is people that have this deep healthcare expertise, like you have, Matt. You can add so much value from a program management perspective because you can shortcut a lot of the learning. Like when you jump into a meeting with someone, you already understand the language, what some of these technical folks are talking about, like right away. I think there's a huge advantage. And while I do believe that a good project manager can come in and learn quickly, having that expertise that you've had adds so much more value, so much quicker in a new environment in the healthcare space.
Yeah, it's fun to be able to see how well you thrive in a different context. And where I'm at now, NeuroFlow, it's a little bit more tech and data driven organization. So I'm still learning. I'll be the first to say I don't know as much as I would like to know about the way in which things are made, but it's good to get in there and learn quickly.
Cool. Now that we have that foundation, I'd love to hear, Matt, what was your project zero? What was that first project where something, that light bulb clicked on and you really figured out how to be a project manager for the first time?
Absolutely, Alex. I think it was when I had to build a plan from scratch. I wasn't handed a template or something to reference, and this was probably 11 to 12 years ago. But then during my tenure at Humana, working in HR executive learning and development, out of the blue, I was asked to prepare an onboarding plan for our new chief human resource officer who was starting in 1 to 2 weeks. It's pretty neat to get to onboard someone probably 3 or more levels above you in the org chart. And I didn't really have a template for exactly how to go about doing this, but I had an idea where to start. And if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, got to make sure we do the basics really well. So I read a couple of books about leader onboarding, such as like First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. But it starts with like laptop equipment, workspace setup, making sure we secure office space, and we arrange for a bit of white glove service to help navigate some of the tech and the system access as they're onboarding, and just keep building from there. Cultivating relationships is like a currency at a 60,000 plus employee company like Humana. So being really intentional around prioritizing who they spend time with as they're developing their own goals and formulating their agenda for the first 100 days on the job. Helping with that. Another component of this executive onboarding experience is helping ensure the executives get to really understand the business and get close to those who are serving on the front line. So I would help arrange for site experiences where they'd spend time in our call center doing a side by side with a rep, seeing all the different screens they have to navigate and how they have to document. And I think it was just enlightening for them to understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of others within the organization. Humana also had these guidance centers for seniors who would take these classes like yoga or cooking to promote healthy, active lifestyles. We had a joint venture with a PCP clinic and a robust pharmacy and mail order operations up the road in Cincinnati. So we'd make sure they got to meet with other leaders, got to really understand the business, especially if they were coming from out of industry. But the key to making all of this a repeatable process, Alex, was having a detailed work plan to make sure nothing fell through the cracks, especially with all the tactical coordination that's needed among different teams. I'd organize and facilitate meetings around once a week, leading up to the executive starting with the company, just to make sure everything was coming together as planned. And that would typically include the lead recruiter, who's a little bit more in contact with the executive before he or she begins. There would be an executive operations partner who can assist in scheduling meetings. Once I had received input from the hiring manager, sometimes the CEO, on that prioritized list of folks to meet with and develop rapport with. Location lead, if that was in scope for the hire. We even partnered with the HR tech team and developed a SharePoint site where slide decks from recent leadership meetings could be available for consumption as they were getting up to speed. So, in the spirit of continuous improvement, I kept looking for ways to optimize the plan and figuring out what else could be done to be helpful. Developed a survey instrument, solicited feedback on things that could have gone better. We documented the business model of different key business units, such as like the value proposition, the customer segments we serve, the channels that we engage them, key activities, resources, partnerships that bring it all to life in these different business units. We got really good feedback on that as well. In summary, I built a project plan for the very first executive who was onboarded, knowing there would be a lot of room for improvement and that more executives would be coming through the pathway as our CEO was revamping his leadership team. And by the time I was 9 to 12 months into leading the practice, I worked with our HR business partners to figure out ways to scale some of the components of the model to the next tier of leadership that was just outside the scope that I would typically engage with.
So cool. That's awesome. And you mentioned grabbing all the books that you could and learning how the heck to do this thing. We've all been there and done that. And now, like with ChatGPT and some of the stuff that's online, we probably would have jumped into that, asking ChatGPT a few questions and reading some articles online. But was there a mentor throughout that whole process? Someone that you were like, "Hey, I don't need you to tell me exactly what to do, but can you give us some guidance about how the heck to approach this?"
My leader was really well networked in some of the different HR circles, and she was able to connect me with a professor, I believe it was at Portland State University, who had done some research on onboarding key leaders. And we were able to bounce ideas off each other and validate, hey, this is what I'm feeling about this, or this is something I'm not as sure about that I was thinking about trying, and just get some quick feedback. It's nice to have others that you can just be a safe sounding board to as you're looking to innovate and optimize experiences who can just provide some quick reaction and engage with.
How did it go with meeting this new leader and helping this person along the journey? Did y'all end up having a close relationship, or how did that work out for you?
That was always the fun part. I was typically on the day two agenda for the new leader. I would go in there and "Okay, all right, here's everything that we've built for you and just help them navigate the website. And here's all the folks that you're meeting with. And I'd even drop some, hey, you may want to ask about this to this
Oh,
leader,
nice.
those sorts of things. Just provide some notes. They were really appreciative of the effort that was put into it. I've never seen anything like this. And I've been in other organizations. So it was nice to get the compliments, but just seeing them be able to assimilate into the organization at an accelerated pace was what it was all about. Just trying to help set up that person for success.
That's so cool. And I mean, it's so interesting because I think that almost every person that I've had on this show that tells me about their Project Zero, and myself included, my own Project Zero, we got exposure to these leaders and these responsibilities on these projects that frankly, we definitely hadn't had the experience yet. Like you had never worked with an executive at Humana the way that you were going to, right? And so to have that experience, have that pressure, and then to come out on the other side successful, like that stuff's huge. Like I remember the CEO and the COO of Optum came in every 2 weeks and checked on my project. It's, "Oh my god, how did I get this exposure?" I still text the COO of Optum now, and it's, wow, what a cool experience, right?
It's great
Yeah.
skill to be able to learn how to toggle the flight at which you're doing. Like, hey, you got to operate a little bit higher level, keep things at a more of a summary, keep things at more of an escalation versus drilling down into the details. Knowing how to operate at different levels within the organization is definitely a great skill to learn as you're honing your project management skills.
Oh, yeah. Let's take a step back now that we've talked about your personal experience and your project zero, that first project that you actually had to lead where you figured things out. And let's just talk advice and mindset and growth. First, what do you think's the number one skill that project managers need to be successful?
Good question, Alex. I know I mentioned listening earlier, but I'd bucket that into just broader emotional intelligence, knowing how to read the room, especially if you're in a virtual environment. It's a bit of an art developed over time, facilitating meetings, knowing when to pause, when to move on to the next topic, and maybe when to go a little bit deeper. I would also vote for having critical thinking, that analytical, deeper understanding, trying to make sense of things, maybe not taking things at face value and knowing when to dig a little bit deeper to validate maybe your understanding and everyone else's understanding. So I think there's an art to effective facilitation that includes a combination of strong listening skills, emotional intelligence, critical thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. This might be a hard question for you because you've mostly lived in the healthcare space, but I'm curious, is there a certain skill set or attribute of a healthcare project manager that like you think is really important when you're working in healthcare? Does it matter that they understand industry language or is there any attribute that you're looking for when you're hiring new PMs?
Yeah, I've hired folks to work with me who maybe weren't as seasoned within healthcare and they were able to pick it up pretty fast. There are certainly some lingo that you just have to spend a little bit more extra time explaining those sorts of things. But I think it's nice to have that experience if you're in the healthcare industry, but it's not essential. And there are things sometimes it's still worth spending time helping folks navigate that learning curve and understanding things more deeply to be successful in the job.
That's probably a testament to your leadership style too. You know what they're gonna get tripped up on, and so you try to help them with the terminology quicker. So this is my favorite question. How do you think AI is gonna impact project management? I say over the next decade, but even over the next few years, how do you think it's gonna most impact our jobs?
I have to admit, I am actively looking for ways to embrace AI. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity with workflow automations, especially if you have dependencies that are tagged within your project plan. As soon as that gets complete, the next person's tagged. You can move forward with this item next. I've been using AI generated note taking a little bit more this year. I'll admit that they still need to be closely reviewed and polished before you send it out, but it does provide a much better starting place than simply starting from scratch or transferring written notes to a document. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting opportunities for it to help us be more effective as project managers. And I'm trying to figure out ways like integration. If there's a Jira ticketing system that's also being used in conjunction with a project plan that's in a different software application, like how can we ensure that there's some synchronization between the two applications or two or more applications that can help keep things moving. And if they're documenting in one system, it flows through to another application.
Yeah, I love that for integration. We used to spend hours mapping integrations to one another in the healthcare space. Like this fire protocol came out and it was supposed to help us standardize everything, and no one was able to adopt it. And frankly, now I don't even know if it's necessary because you just need to look for the attributes on one side and then the attributes on the other side and match them. And AI is really good at that. We use ClickUp internally at our firm and we use the AI within ClickUp, and it's so awesome to be able to pull our data from Hub. I have a flow where it's just like, let's use the native integration from HubSpot into ClickUp, and then go and read the description and then put it in all the custom fields on the ClickUp side. And it can just do it. There's no mapping, nothing. It automatically does it. So much time savings. Unbelievable.
Some things just weren't optimized, or they were sub-optimized if they were done manually. There's some things that the human needs to be removed from the equation just from a quality perspective. But that's a really interesting example with interoperability and help AI helping advance or accelerate developments on that side.
Great thoughts on that. I do agree too. I would say that the note taking, especially the Copilot in Microsoft Teams, is probably like 80%, 90% accurate with its summary of the total meeting. Action items are just bad right now. That's what I'm listening for. What key decisions were made, what action items need to be tracked, and then I'll just go check the summary and probably usually add it to the summary because it didn't catch it all the time. But that's what we're trying to get all of our PMs to think about is where do we know AI can fail? And let's listen for that. And then it frees you up to actually facilitate the meeting instead of just paying attention and taking notes and stuff.
It's
Pretty
tough to do
cool.
them both. It really
No.
is. It's helped for certain,
Yeah.
like over the course of the last year or so, but it's fun to still take some notes, at least the critical things, and match it up. Like, how well did they on the Google side? It's doing a pretty good job, but the way they summarize and combine topics in the notes, there's some room for improvement there.
Yeah. When you were, let's say 10, 15 years ago, when you were starting out, your definition of success on a project might have been make sure all the tasks got done, make sure the budget was met, all the things that PMI tells us we're supposed to focus on. But what's your definition of success today with a project? Like when you go in and you kick off a new project, what are you looking for success attributes?
Ideally, there's an executive sponsor or like a key stakeholder, the ultimate decision maker, if that we need to engage at times. Aligning with that person on what success look the onset can be very powerful. And just making sure maybe the deliverable is a minimum viable product that will continue to be built and refined and scaled after the launch, but just making sure we're on the same page. Hey, this thing isn't going to be fully developed. We're not going to be statewide when we go live with this type of thing. Those can be just good conversations and a forcing mechanism around the scope and the timing and just making sure that we're setting up the ongoing operations after the implementation for success. But I ask better questions now than I did 10, 15 years ago, just to make sure the project plan is going to be configured in a way to maximize the chance of achieving success based upon what the executive sponsor sees as defined success. If you can tie a metric to it, I try to find ways to be quantitative about it if at all possible. Sometimes it's easier to just time box it, but I like that. Trying to go a little bit more the extra mile on metrics.
You can't argue with number. I guess you can make any number go any which way, but having those quantitative metrics is helpful for sure. But that's great advice. When you're at the beginning of your career as a project manager and you get the like iron triangle driven in your head, you lose sight of the fact that it's always at the beginning of the project. You need to know what the definition of success is. And it's that person that owns it, the executive sponsor, project sponsor, whatever it is, that person, we need to all agree that is the definition of success. And that person needs to gather that from somewhere else too. But at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Has that been met?
It's the
Not
North
like have
Star.
all the tasks been done? Because that's not the same thing.
100% agree. Absolutely.
Love it. Let's say I'm an early career project manager and you're going to mentor me, Matt. What's that one or two pieces of advice you'd give to that new person that wants to get into project management?
I would say to stay curious, keep learning about how work gets done. If you can shadow someone in product or engineering, clinical data, if your company supports job rotations into different parts of the organization, I would try to opt into that. It's likely you can come back to project management, but I think the deep insights that you can glean from not only shadowing, but actually embedding yourself for a year or two within a different domain area can be really enlightening. I think curiosities around how work gets done is something I would strongly recommend.
I think about all the folks that I've interviewed, and almost every single one of them ask me just as many questions back as I ask them. I think that is the key to a good project manager. That's great. Matt, thanks so much. How do people get in contact with you?
LinkedIn is a good way to find me. Pretty easy to search by first and last name.
Awesome. Cool. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt. Great insights today.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. Privilege.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone who joined us for Project Zero this week. And be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And We will catch you next time with that next great project leader story.